we have to remember what we love about our lives, even while life is so hard and we're so exhausted and we're just so weary and we're so burned out and we're so overwhelmed. It is okay to it's more than okay. It is necessary to continue to love this life and to continue to create a life that you love.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space for you to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion and kindness, so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I am so glad that you're here with me today for this conversation with today's guest, bestselling author Shannan Martin. Shannan, welcome. Thanks for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here, Jillian. Thank you.
Well, and I know you are in the middle of your book tour. You're fully in the book launch process. And so I know that this is one of many conversations that feels extra special and honoring that you'd make this space. So
absolutely.
You just returned from the first leg of your tour. What's the next part of this book launch journey that you're heading into?
Yeah. I have a couple of things that are more local, drivable. So Grand Rapids and then Chicago. I am also the commencement speaker at Goshen College Commencement
My goodness,
in a couple of weeks. So that feels like that's a really big deal. It's an honor, but it's very close to home. Yes. And then in May, I am doing a couple of stops in Texas. So I'll be in Abilene and Waco.
Okay, so for anyone listening in any of those areas, you're going to want to hop on the internet and find where you can get tickets to see Shannan.
You can, shannanmartin.com. You can find all of the info there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, for people that aren't familiar with your work yet, Shannan, I'd love to read your bio and then jump into our conversation about your most recent book that just launched a couple weeks ago, Counterweights, which I was sharing just before we started recording, has wrecked me. It's wrecked me in the very best way. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Me too.
But for those who haven't met you yet, I want you to know that Shannan Martin is the best-selling author of several books, including Start With Hello, The Ministry of Ordinary Places, and the popular Substack, The Soup. Shannan is a wannabe gardener, a news geek, a fighter for justice, and a thrift store stalker. She and her family live as grateful neighbors in Goshen, Indiana, where Shannan is on staff at the local community kitchen. It's so fun. I feel like reading this bio, I feel like I know you so much more having finished the book, Counterweights.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit of your story just before we jump into the book?
Sure.
Kind of the background, just about your journey, how you got into this work of writing and sharing words online and in books in the first place.
I did the thing a lot of women were doing back in the early aughts. I started a blog and I started so we have 4 children. All were adopted out of birth order. So we have a 32-year-old way out in the world, doing his own grown man thing with kids of his own and the whole 9 yards. He came into our family most recently. So at the time, we were just starting our family. We have 3 younger kids. They're now 17, 19, and 21. But when they were babies, when our family was just sort of starting, I just I had time on my hands. I needed a creative pursuit. We did not have, smartphones were not what they are now. I know I for sure didn't have a smartphone. I was a late adopter to that. And
Same.
I wanted
me
to,
too.
I wanted to share, I wanted to document their lives, and I wanted to have a way to share photos with my family who was out of state. So I started this little blog. I did not think of myself as a writer. I did not aspire to be a writer in any way. But over time, people started reading my little blog. This is a story we've heard before. I'm not the only person who it happened for in this way, but I blogged for about 10 years and I blogged prolifically. And what happened over time was that I was practicing. I was learning to be a writer. And though it wasn't something I intended to happen, I was finding my voice. I was honing my craft. This is lifelong work for a writer.
Yeah.
But I sort of found my voice as a writer. And then about 14 years ago, when our three youngest were preschool, early elementary, my family moved from our farmhouse out in the country into this home in a very ordinary, technically sort of an under-resourced neighborhood in a nearby city. And this is where I sort of found my story, and it began to lock in with me. These threads as a writer, I'm always looking for a way to tie the threads together. So I typically can't write just about this one thing. Sometimes I have one thing that's going on in the back of my mind. I need to find another thing that it's tied to. That's where my writing and my best writing comes from. And so I started to kind of find those threads, and then decided I wanted to pursue writing a book. So I found an agent and wrote a proposal, and it's kind of a boring story, because some people have these amazing, like, somebody reached out to me and asked me if I would write a book. That's not what happened for me. I did all the steps,
Yeah.
right? So it took a long time, and there were no
Mhm.
guarantees, and here we are. This is my fourth book coming out into the world.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it really is so comforting, honestly, to hear you say, no one knocked on my door and asked me to write a book.
Right.
Because there are other people listening, including this person right here, me, who would love for someone just to say, hey, I see you. I see your words. I see your message. Come, let me give you the opportunity to write. And that's, for most people, not how it works. And so,
That's right.
yeah,
It's slow work. It's a long game.
yeah.
There are just, my advice to you and to anybody else listening is, if you are writing, you're a writer. Emily Freeman, she's another author and one of my dearest friends. And way back when, she was the first person that said, stop saying you want to be a writer, Shannon. You are a writer.
Wow.
Even if you're not a published author, you're a writer.
Yeah,
So yeah, just keep doing that work, because it all counts. It all
absolutely.
I could never have imagined, where all of those, I was blogging like 5 days a week. It was just crazy. But we didn't have Instagram at
Right.
the time. Like, all these things, we didn't have Substack, all these things that have kind of filtered in. That was my way of kind of just doing that work, and learning how to do that work. So just keep going.
I love that. I appreciate that. That it's like the long game, right? Like that long view
Yeah.
of, okay, how we show up now is preparing us and strengthening our muscles for where we will be, which we can't
Yeah,
even imagine where we will be.
that's
Um,
right.
but that reminder that even naming, Emily P. Freeman would say, how we name things matters, how we name
Yeah.
ourselves, how we label ourselves as a writer, that matters. So I received that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I think about even the part of your story you just mentioned, that you moved into this sort of under-resourced part of your community.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk about that decision and
Hmm.
how that's impacted you and your story?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I did describe it as under-resourced because that's how most of our culture would describe it. I have come to see it as abundantly resourced. So there are things this community could use more of. We are often overlooked, I would say, but the resources the community itself brings are abundant. And so
Mm,
it's important for me to just kind of um, make that clear from the start. So yeah, we, it's like, it feels so long ago in some ways, and this is home, and it's been home for a very long time now. And it still feels a little wild to me, like, in the best sort of way. It still feels like something that I don't fully know. It doesn't feel stale. It feels alive, and it feels wild in that sense of, like, untamed,
mm,
being in this place, and continuing to find my place in it and put my roots down in it. But the shortest version of the story, and I wrote all of this down in my previous book. So anybody who's super curious, my very first book is titled Falling Free. And
mm,
in that book, I write the whole story of how we ended up from this life that we used to live into this life that we live now. And this story has continued to bloom and unfold and unfurl. We just knew that my husband and I both knew we had lived our entire lives in very homogenous spaces. And for lack of a better way to say it, we knew that there was something different for us. And that's not to say that what was different for us or what we needed should be that that way for everybody. This isn't a call for everybody to uproot their lives and move. But for us, it was very, very clear that that's the direction our lives were moving us into, and that I would even say that God was kind of calling us into. Um, so yeah, we showed up here with our young children. Soon after moving into this home, our oldest came into our family. He was at the time 19. Then my husband became the chaplain of the Elkhart County Jail. He's been doing that now for about 12 or 13 years. So it's the second largest county jail in the state of Indiana, which is not a distinction anybody wants. That's not an
Right.
award you want to win. It's a
Sure.
very, very big place, and a very rural and red county. So Corey's work is not, he's in the jail, but he's not directly tied to the jail. He works independently of the jail, and they have a great relationship to where, the jail ministry and his staff, they're welcomed in that space. So his work continues to grow and get broader and wider and deeper. And 7 years ago, I started working at the community kitchen here in Goshen. I've been on staff there part-time for 7 years. So yeah, all the while our kids are growing. they
Yeah.
are, they're growing up. We arrived here with preschoolers, and now our youngest is a junior, almost done with his junior year of high school. So we're just on the edge of empty nest years. And I still don't know where to put all of my complex feelings about that.
Oh, I am sure.
But it's coming for us, ready or not. So yeah,
Right.
life carries us. Life carries on.
Right. Well, and I love how you share so much in the book about your neighbors and your intentionality with which you look at the people in your community through the eyes of our shared humanity. Like you refuse to other anyone. And that to me is so beautiful and stirred up this longing in me to really see people the way
Yeah.
you describe seeing them, Shannan. And so I just want to name how beautiful and inspiring it is that you and Corey have been so intentional in your life to make deliberate choices to draw closer and closer and closer, especially to those who maybe larger culture or other parts of the community could choose to draw further and further and do choose to draw further and
Yeah.
further away from. And I want you to talk about your experience in the community kitchen, but I want you to at least tell us before we jump into some of those stories about Counterweights, about the book. Like, what
Yeah.
was the origin story of this most
Yes.
recent book, Counterweights?
Yeah. All credit goes to my dad, Dwight Garber. I dedicated this book to him, and his name appears definitely on the first page, but oh yeah, first sentence, second sentence.
I love it. I love that.
There's my dad. So I grew up in southwestern Ohio in a very working class, um, rural community. My dad worked construction all of his working years. He built homes and bridges, and he was the sort of dad that I always knew he could do anything. He could build anything. He could figure anything out. We lived on a small farm, but he wasn't a farmer. But we would have cows sometimes, pigs sometimes. And I have this clear memory of when I was maybe early elementary school, walking from the house across the barnyard to the barn, and my dad was carrying two buckets. And he said to me then, and why I remember this, I don't really know, other than, it brought us to this moment now. So it was, my
Yeah.
body knew to hold on to
Yes.
this. And he said, Shannan, anytime you have something heavy to carry, the easiest way to carry something heavy is to carry something equally heavy in the other hand. And so he, right there in the middle of the barnyard, he set one bucket down and said, if you're carrying one heavy bucket, you're tipping over, your body is trying to balance itself out so that you can move forward. And it's difficult. It's got you kind of dragging the ground. As soon as you pick up an equally heavy bucket, it pulls us to center so that we can regain or create the momentum we need to move forward. And I remember as a young child thinking, this makes no sense. You're telling me to carry double the weight and it will be easier. But life has proven it over and over
Yeah.
again. And my dad meant this in the most practical way. Like he just
Mm.
needed help getting heavy things to the barn.
Right.
And he was trying to teach us how to do that. I was not cut out for the sort of work my dad does. I was cut out for words and for metaphor. And over time, deep into adulthood, when we were living in this community, in this home, our lives became entangled and enmeshed in really beautiful ways with people who were struggling in ways we had never struggled. And it was a really important, and in many ways it was overdue for Corey and I to begin to understand how privileged we had been, how fortunate we had been throughout our entire lives to suddenly be immersed in the hardship and in the struggle of other people. It was honestly kind of heartbreaking, devastating. A friend of mine during that time said, she was kind of following my blog at the time, and she said, "Shannan, you just seem sad all the time now." And I took that to heart and I thought about it and I said, every day I am sad now. And that was somewhat new for me. Every day I see things that are so hard that I am sad. And also every single day I feel joy. Every single day I see beauty. Every single day I consider what it means to be in community and to be in connection with each other. And so this is that both and. This is life. This is two things being true at the same time. And during those kind of formational years here, the metaphor returned to me. And so this idea of we have these heavy things, we all have heavy things that we are carrying. They're different. Some of them are the same. We have global heaviness. We have local heaviness. We have really personal heaviness. It's not a competition. Whatever hard things we're carrying right now, they're really hard for us. And we don't have the option to put that bucket down. And we didn't ask for these things. We might not want these things. We can't control these things. So at the same time, here they are. Life is asking us to receive them. Our job is to figure out how to carry them. And so the reminder here is we have this other bucket. And with this other bucket, we do have a say in what goes into that bucket. We do have a little bit of control and agency, and we can choose to move through our lives filling that other bucket with heavy goodness to counterweight the things that are hard. It doesn't mean that it cancels them out. It doesn't make them go away. It just pulls us a little higher up off the ground. It brings us a little closer back to center so that we have the momentum we need to keep going.
Wow. I love that. The intentional counterbalancing of the heaviness we're carrying already. It's not like we can just put those buckets down, which is what I
Right.
want to do. If I'm
Of
honest, I just want to
course.
put the heaviness down. Like, no, thank you.
Right.
Like, there's got to be a way to bury that. And maybe
Yeah.
sometimes often, if I'm truly honest, my response is to say, well, if I just don't look at the bucket, if I
Yeah.
ignore the bucket, if I bury the bucket, maybe I won't feel the weight of it.
Mhm. Right.
And that's true. That can be true in the lives of people that are close to me. That can be true in terms of, global events or even,
Mhm.
politics, whatever it is. I just don't want to
Right.
look at the bucket. And I
Right.
was sharing with you before we started recording that I am someone who feels deeply. And so often will become so overwhelmed by the pain
Yeah.
of the heaviness of the world or of my own heaviness
Yeah.
that it almost feels dangerous to acknowledge how heavy that is. But I hear you say, no, it's not about ignoring that. It's about
Right.
countering it with
Yeah.
beauty and goodness. Yeah.
I appreciate that you say that because I am the opposite of you. And I think
Hmm.
all of us are one or the other or somewhere on that spectrum. I am more comfortable for whatever reason focusing on the heaviness. And
Hmm.
my capacity for that is bigger than it is for a lot of people, which is not a better or worse thing. It's just the way we all are. I had to force myself. I had to say, and this is really part of the reason I set out to write this book. I was being consumed by the heaviness. I can stay in it. I can live there. I can, until my eyes are bleeding, I can look at the heaviness and fixate on it. And it was becoming too much for me. And I had to figure out a more manageable way. I had to find a way to redistribute some of that weight. So some of us choose to, or like we're compelled to ignore the heaviness. I had to get really intentional about seeking out the goodness. I had to really kind of reroute my brain. And what I discovered was, in the midst of everything that was hard and terrible and unjust in this world, I also still really loved my life. And that's confusing. It's confusing. The way our lives are unfolding right now, I wrote this towards the end of the book. There was one day in particular where I was out clipping my peonies, and I live in northern Indiana where peony season is so fleeting, and I live for it every year. I'm just watching them. Right now, I'm like watching them like a hawk, and they finally bloom, and it is one of my best days of the whole year. And I was out clipping those peonies. We live on this small little city lot, and my husband walked out the back door and was walking up this little hill that we have, and told me about a mass shooting at a school. And I just remember I'm like holding these gorgeous flowers that I've waited for all year, and now I'm holding another tragedy, senseless tragedy, and I have to go back inside and make dinner for my family. Like, this is that moment in time, and it's like, how do you navigate this? How do we live? How do we live with acknowledging this world it does not have to be the way it is right now. There are parts of this world that are fundamentally broken, and we have to care enough and have enough hope to believe we can build something better. We really, really can.
Yeah.
We're not ever going to do that if we don't also allow ourselves the grace, the permission to love this life that we've been given. It feels so murky and so muddy. It feels weird. It felt weird to me even in that moment to acknowledge the heaviness while also bringing those flowers indoors and putting them in a vase and being so grateful and joyful for them. So this is the too muchness of our lives. And it's every day. We're putting a good friend of mine, she's younger than me. She's not in the empty nest years yet. She's with, little babies. And she's saying, I'm putting my kids to bed at night being worried about nuclear war. Like, is this going to happen? Like, what is tomorrow going to bring? And also I'm singing lullabies to my babies. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And so finding a way to remember we can only counter what we are willing to weigh. That means this is about more than a gratitude list. That means we have to name it all. We have to be honest about all of it. We have to weigh the things that are heavy, and then perpetually, constantly look in our everyday, ordinary lives for those little small things. I mean, you've read the book, Jillian. Some of these counterweights are so small. They seem almost like, who cares? But for me, they make a difference. For me, if they raise me 1 inch off the ground, in that moment, that is a win, and I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, I love practically that each chapter has some examples of counterweights at the end. One of my favorites, and I still haven't made the playlist, was the Taylor Swift songs that you got you through a really difficult season.
Yeah.
It's some of your favorite books, the novels that you were loving.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you said this is more than just a gratitude list, because it's easy for us to say, okay, well, yes, just focus on the good, and to use this sort of toxic positivity that this is not that, to bypass, even spiritually bypass. We do that a lot in faith communities, right? Where
That's
we're
right.
like, okay, let me just ignore what's hard and focus on the good, and that'll sort of wash over the pain, and it'll all be fine.
The joy of the Lord is your strength, right?
And that's enough.
And that's
just
true. Right.
Don't lament.
Right.
Don't focus on the pain, because, we know the ending. But yeah, so say more about how this is different than a gratitude list, and kind of some of the gritty reality of what that looks like to hold on to these counterweights. I'm thinking yesterday, a quick aside, as I had finished reading the book, and I, in my own life over the past few days, have just been overcome by heaviness all around me, and not even anything particularly hard for myself personally, but people I love carrying things that feel heavy, that
Yep.
as I love them, I'm carrying them with them. And I found myself spinning out. And as I'm reading the book, thinking about all of the things in the world that are hard and heavy. And I found
Mm,
myself like just weeping on the
mhm,
couch and almost unable. I had your words in my mind, like, okay, reach for the counterweights, reach for the counterweights. But I'm like,
Yeah.
but how? How? What do I do? What does
Yeah.
that look like? So can you sort of
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit more for us?
Well, yes, I'd love to. The good news is grief is a counterweight to loss.
Mm,
And so allowing yourself to feel your feelings, to not squash them, to not stuff them, to not ignore them, to not bypass them. We think of grief so often as the loss itself. The grief is the response to the loss. And so loss is happening. It's happening in our lives. Like you said, it's so much of the weights I carry. And this came through even in the book, in the writing, in all of my books, honestly. It's sort of that secondhand smoke.
mm,
It's like those contact burns of the heat of other people's pain and heaviness and struggle that I'm close enough to feel, right?
mm,
I think there's something really meaningful and beautiful in that image of sitting so close to each other while we are hurting that we feel some of the heat seep through our own genes, right?
mhm.
And so that's just a part of my life. And it's a beautiful part of my life. And it's a heartbreaking part of my life. Being able to feel it all, to be honest about it all, to fall on the couch some days, to stay longer in bed some days, to refuse to be pulled out of that grief before we are ready. I wrote about after something political happened in the world, something that I would not have chosen. It was devastating for me. It's heartbreaking for me. And I pulled on, I'm a big thrift store person. So almost everything I wear, almost everything you see right now, you're here in my house with me, comes from a thrift store. But I had found this cozy black sweater and I just pulled it on as like my dramatically as like my morning cloak. But there was something in it. I say it kind of tongue in cheek. At the same time, I needed to embody my grief. I am not
Mhm.
as good a crier as I wish I would be, but I was still grieving. And
Yeah.
so that was my way of embodying my grief. Like I'm going to wrap myself up into this kind of hug, into this black sweater. And it's something that it was just for me. It
Mm,
wasn't something I was writing about, something I was talking about at the time. It was just my way of saying, this is heavy and hard, and I'm really sad and disappointed about this. And this is the way that I am going to um, care for myself in the midst of it. So yes, I want us to remember that grief is not the problem. Grief
yeah.
is what helps us heal from the things that are happening to us all the time. I think rejecting grief is not healing us. Ignoring grief is not healing us. And to your point, Jillian, in the life of Jesus, we see him grieve.
Mhm.
We see him grieve even as he knows the redemption that's coming on the other
Yeah.
side in multiple stories throughout the Bible. And so I think that's a cue for us to here we are in these bodies loaded with senses and receptors and nerves, and we are feeling people. We're meant to experience the world, not to just observe it. so
Mm.
so letting ourselves really truly experience everything as it happens is truly a counterweight that each of us can lean on, and that will look different from situation to situation.
Yeah. Well, I love that clarification that this is about
Yeah.
embodying not just our grief, but I hear even underneath that, embodying our joy. That it's not
Right.
just, just to make that um, discrepancy between a gratitude list and a counterweight. I imagine it being very easy to make a list intellectually of things I'm grateful for that can still stay disembodied, where I
Right.
can intellectually assent to, oh, there is goodness all around me. Yes, there is beauty in my children. Yes, there's beauty in the flowers my friend brought me. But there's a difference between naming it intellectually and embodying it, where I'm able to experience the full range of emotion and to sit with the beauty and the joy and the goodness long enough for it to penetrate my heart.
Yes,
That's beautiful.
100%. I think our lives are asking us to experience the things that are happening around us. And so I think not all of my counterweights are physical and tangible, but I think a lot of them are.
Hmm.
It's drawing on my body, it's drawing on my senses, it's asking my body what it needs, and it's listening to my body when it tells me, what I need. And this what this also isn't, it's not about, sort of that treat yourself mentality. It's not about spending money or consuming. And, some of the things I write about do cost money. Travel
Sure.
for me is a counterweight, and that's a privilege. And, I want to write about that with care. Um, Food is a counterweight for me. And I work in a community kitchen where food is not as accessible as it should be for everyone. And so even in the counterweights, we carry that complexity. But what I know for sure is that counterweights are accessible to everyone. So
Mm.
for the folks that come and eat lunch with us on weekdays at the kitchen, their meal, I hope and believe, is a counterweight for them. Not just the food on the tray, but the community that surrounds it. We have these little friend groups that develop, and they come every day and they sit together and they enjoy their lunch. And, it's the food, and it's the safety of the space, and it's the reliability. It's the warmth of the room, and, all of these things. So yes, very often I'm asking myself, what do I need? Do I need beauty? And there are ways of seeking beauty. Do I need rest? There are ways of seeking rest. Do I need connection? Do I need prayer? Do I need delight? And then finding ways to fulfill that in the moment. I mean, a lot of times I have a friend walking through something really, really hard right now, just like you mentioned, Jillian. And she said to me this week, I am looking for counterweights hour by hour. I am saying to myself, what do I need right now to get me through this next hour? And whatever she's able to find, it does not erase the hard things happening in her life, but it keeps her steady enough to get her to the next hour.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really sustainable and something really powerful and embracing this practice and naming it, being able to
Yes.
say to each other, to ourselves, what are your counterweights?
Hmm.
The time is coming. I'm already seeing it happen where among friend groups and families and things like that, we know what that word means, and it becomes a shorthand, a way
Mm.
for us to check in on each other and a way for us to care for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're asking yourself that question. What do I need? What do I need? And even the
Hmm.
permission from your friend,
Yeah,
the permission for all of us to ask often. It's not like, oh, I had a counterweight already today. Well, wait till tomorrow for the next one. But
right.
that permission to ask
Yeah,
again and again, what do I need right now? But I'm thinking about a lot of the women that I work with as a life and leadership coach. That question of what do I need is a really difficult one to answer.
yeah,
Like
it
there is
really
a
is.
lot, there's a lot there. So I'm wondering what advice you would give to women or any listeners who would struggle, especially in those moments of overwhelm, right? Where we're just, our brains are flooded, our nervous system is flooded, and it's
Yes.
hard to have the self-awareness to problem solve and think creatively. So what advice would you give to someone who struggles to even answer that question? What do I need? Where
Yeah.
could we look?
I think that is so relatable to so many of us. We don't really know ourselves. We don't know what we want. We don't know what we need. And for a lot of us, especially in faith spaces, which not all of us here are, and I think that's wonderful.
Hmm.
But for those of us who are, there's the added layer of maybe it's wrong to want things. Maybe it's kind of selfish to long for something. So, number one, I'm here to dismantle and dismiss that idea. And I'm here to remind us part of this work is getting to know ourselves a little better. And understanding, oh, I'm allowed to like things, to love things, to want things, to long for things, to hate things, to
Yes.
dislike things. I'm an introvert, right? So part of my work is understanding that's not something that's wrong with me. It's the way I was built, the way I was created and wired. And sometimes I have to push myself out of that comfort zone. I could spend a really long time in a quiet house in silence alone. I
Same.
really could.
Yes.
Yes. So, and at the same time, community has become so important to me. So I've learned I have to push myself outside of that sometimes. And it's always a reward for me. Um, you mentioned throughout the book. So I wrote this as I was writing, over the course of a year or so. I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could be about the things that were heavy in my life. And I wanted to be very honest about the things that were lifting me back up. And so the book contains multitudes. There's a lot happening. And I'm
Yes.
writing about some really painful and devastating things, some things I've never talked about publicly. And I'm also writing about why it matters to me to come out each morning into my kitchen and choose my mug off of my mug rack. Why that is such an inconsequential, seemingly, moment in time that who cares what who cares what mug it is? Just give me caffeine, right? But for me, that is carving out a little moment of agency, of
Yes.
me remembering that there are things throughout my day that I have a say in, that I can be intentional with my choices. Um, and that's a rhythm that I can sustain from day to day. So right now, this is the mug I'm drinking
I
from.
love it.
Most of my mugs are from thrift stores. This one was a gift from my friend Marcy. She knows I love the sky. Looking at the sky is a big, big counterweight for me. And I just came off of a pretty grueling but wonderful week on this first leg of my book tour. This is my first morning at home in about a week. And, this one called to me. And so we
Yes.
take that mug off the shelf. I'm a tea drinker, so I boil the water. I do this ritual of care for myself. Women need to see ourselves, care for ourselves. And
Yes.
there's a distinction there. It's not just like we need to take care of ourselves. We need to see ourselves take care of ourselves. And so finding whatever your thing might be, maybe a lot of people get joy out of choosing what they wear that day, or, choosing what they're going to listen to, choosing what they're going to read out of, that we have these little moments. And so through the book, as I'm writing about hard things and counterweighty things, I'm making these lists. That's a great way for some of us who are like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need. Start jotting some lists. Just make yourself do it. Commit
Yes.
the time. You can do it slowly. You can spend, it doesn't have to all be done in one day, but reacquaint yourself with yourself. And as
Yes.
you do that work, then you're more easily able to identify the counterweights that are always happening around us that you can reach for.
I love that. The power of choosing what we pay attention to
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
noticing. I love that we have to know ourselves. We have to see ourselves caring for ourselves, and the
Yeah.
permission that is to pay attention to our own longings, our own joy, our own needs,
That's
even in the
right.
midst of the world burning, it feels like.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
some of those specific examples that you just gave of, okay, choosing a mug in the morning, it brings me so much joy too. I was actually
I'm
inspired
so
by your
glad.
collection. I'm like, look, my husband's name is also Corey. And so I'm like, look, Corey,
Okay.
she has a lot of mugs too. It's okay. um,
People who have like a full matching set of mugs and they're all the same. That's just not my life. Like for those
yeah,
people, they have
it's
something
fine.
else that they want to put intention into. But find those things, those little moments. You're going to do them regardless, right? We're all looking for ways to survive the too muchness. And so finding those little moments of care, like when I say little moments, some of them are so, so little, but they all count. They're all adding to that heavy goodness. They're all
Yes.
lifting us up just a little further off the ground so that we can keep paying attention to all this other stuff over here that's hard, but that also really is asking for our attention.
Yes. Well, and I love this idea of paying attention because that's actually in our neurobiology of our brains. Our attention is actually the key to neuroplasticity. So what we pay
Yes,
attention to shapes the neural pathways in our brains, and that shapes our lived felt experience. So that emphasis on what are we paying attention to? Let's make some lists and be intentional about that heavy goodness that we can pay attention to that's already here in our actual lives. So as you talk about these lists, give us a couple more specific examples of what sorts of lists we could make. I'm thinking about like what gives me life or
yeah,
energy or joy.
yes.
What are some other lists people could make practically?
One of the lists that I had so much fun making for this book was comfort foods that always help. I'm a foodie. So, I've
Mm,
already mentioned I work in a kitchen. I think about food a lot. I enjoy making food. I enjoy feeding other people, but mostly I enjoy eating food. And there are all these categories, but I wanted to hone in on like comfort food. Like on the days when we need to be comforted for whatever reason, what are some of those foods that bring me comfort? And the list could have been a lot longer. I finally cut myself off. But even just, a lot of the things that ended up on my list are maybe nostalgic. They're reminding me of home, of being loved by my family, of being loved by my neighbors. So that's it's an easy place to start because, I'm always surprised by the number of people who, if you say, what are you hungry for? I don't know. What's your
mhm.
favorite food? I don't know. And that's not that I don't say that with any condemnation. I think that's what this world has done to us, especially as women who are always so often, whether we are mothers or not, we are caring for other people, to bring that focus back to ourselves because we're also worthy of sacred attention and saying like, wait, what do I enjoy? What makes me feel comforted? I
Mhm.
think it's important for us to learn these things about
Mm,
ourselves.
what makes me feel comforted? Oh, that's a powerful question to ask.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for ideas of lists to make, start with counterweights and maybe make your own list at the end of every chapter. And I love that you included pictures in some of these
I
chapters.
know. I was so glad they let me do that.
Oh, it was
It's
so
rare in a
beautiful.
paperback.
Yes, yes, and it was so inspiring too. So,
Yeah.
examples of lists, staycation ideas, and I was literally jotting these down. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to do that. I wouldn't have thought of that. Um, yeah, the I loved the list of longings. That what a
Yeah.
powerful list that is to pay attention to what it is we long for. So, start
And
with
that was stream of consciousness. And I would
oh
encourage that. Like
yes,
I was sitting at the base of a tree in a nearby park and I wasn't planning to do this. I only have my phone with me. So I'm typing it into my phone. I just didn't censor myself. And it went on and on and on. And it was that moment of realizing I'm allowed to want things. I am allowed.
yes.
And some of them were big, some of them were very small and random. Some of them I don't know if I'll ever get there. But giving myself the moment to just be honest with myself
Mm,
was very liberating and I highly encourage it. So as you read that, I did not edit it. I mean,
I love that.
this is what flowed out in the moment and I included it for all of you to see.
And what a beautiful permission slip, right? That we're allowed to want things and we're allowed to pay
Mhm.
attention to what we want. And that in
Yeah.
itself is its own counterweight to notice our longings in a world that makes us feel like we're not allowed, like we don't have a choice. We don't have a
Yeah.
voice. We don't have agency. We feel powerless. So I love the practicality of this practice, Shannan. And I love the invitation for us to look for, to name those places of heavy goodness that already
Mhm.
exist in our lives. And I really want to encourage people. I have not been so impacted by a book in a long, long time. And Counterweights is not only beautiful. I mean, look at this cover. There's this
The
beautiful
cover,
peony.
the
Oh my
peonies.
gosh. I
There it
just want to
is.
look at it all day long. The colors,
There's an
everything.
audiobook too for audio
Yes.
people. So, yeah,
Are you the one that reads it?
I am. Yep.
Amazing. Amazing. So yeah, you
Yes.
can listen to
Yes.
Shannan reading to you, but I'll make sure to link this in the show notes and make sure to follow Shannan. She is just a beautiful, kind and fierce voice for goodness and justice and beauty in the world. So I just encourage you to follow her. Shannan, before we sign off, is there a permission slip that you would want to give to listeners?
I would love to. One of the things I say often is I want to remind you that you already have permission, right? Like we have permission. We already have it. So let's remember to use it. The permission I would like you to remember today is that no one can love your life for you. So as we move forward, and that's really like at the core, like that's the bullseye of counterweights is we have to remember all there is to love about this life. We have to remember we only get to do this once. We have to remember even this moment right here. this moment right here is, it's never going to happen again. And so it's special. This is special. This life is special. If we are going to create a better world where everyone can belong, and that's what I sure hope we're going to do together, we have to remember what we love about our lives, even while life is so hard and we're so exhausted and we're just so weary and we're so burned out and we're so overwhelmed. It is okay to still, it's more than okay. It is necessary to continue to love this life and to continue to create a life that you love. So that's my permission
I
today.
love that. Shannan, thank you. This has been just strengthening for my heart, inspiring, hope producing, and I am confident very, very helpful for our listeners. So thank you for your good work, for being faithful and gritty and brave enough to write this book, and for the ways that you're encouraging all of us today to pay attention to the goodness, the heavy goodness that's already there. Thanks for being here.
I'm so honored. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope this conversation will help you look for your own counterweights as you move through the days of your actual life, and will give you eyes to see the places of heavy goodness that already exist. And if you want to connect with Shannan, check out the links in the show notes to order your copy of Counterweights and to find her on social media. Remember, your life matters. And so do the practices that bring you wholeness and joy. More than you know.